Hello, this is a Brave Knight Mercenary spotlight on Slain. Slain is a legendary warrior and is part of the new legendary group called Personas. Slain's story is that he's a dude who sits on the throne and burns anyone that opposes him. He's pretty much Lelouch from Code Geass, or as my non-anime watching friend accidentally called it, Code Geass. Slain shares a lot of similarities to Lelouch from the design to the ruthless politician aspirations that both characters share. Slain's companion is Anaduty. She's a very powerful witch who specializes in curses and summoning spells. She takes care of Slain and assists him by providing him technologies and magic. She also enjoys wearing sensuous underwears, except she frequently forgets to actually wear them. Not gonna lie, I feel bad for the translator who has to write out this stupid shit, unless they just throw the original script into Google Translate and this is what they end up with. Won't be surprised. I'll briefly go over Slain's skills, gameplay style, and provide some of my opinions on him. I won't be going over the details of his skills, but just the general parts of it. I linked the Brave Knight Encyclopedia in the video description where you can easily read on his stats and skill values. Slain's first skill is Chains of Treason. This skill contains part of his various unique passive abilities. Whenever one of Slain's allies dies, he will receive an additional turn. These additional turns accumulate, and Slain will cash them out at the end of the round by attacking consecutively. Let me show you an example. In this campaign stage, I set up this battle to where I will lose 8 units as the battle unfolds. You can see that for every one of my ally that dies, Slain gets an additional turn that appears at the end of the round. Additional turns behave like any normal turn, so buffs, DOTs, and etc. will still pass as he's using his turns. In the case of a mirror match where 2 Slains are on both sides, the additional turns are queued up and will stack on top of each other. In this example, my opponent loses 2 units first, so their Slain gets 2 turns queued up. And then I lose 2 units, so my Slain gets 2 turns afterwards. Then my opponent loses another 2 units, and those 2 turns come afterwards. At the end of the round, my opponent's Slain moves twice, then mine moves twice, and then theirs moves twice again. Hypothetically, if I were to lose 4 units in a row before I got to kill one of my opponents, then my Slain will move 4 times, and their Slain will move once afterwards. Lastly, in regards to the mirror match between 2 Slains, if they are killing each other's units, a Slain won't get an additional turns if their allies die to an enemy Slain's additional turn. This is just mostly to ensure that 2 Slains will not be caught in a loop where they just kill each other's teammates until one Slain dies, which will be pretty silly to watch. Now back to the skill. At plus 6, Chain of Treason provides Slain with 1 turn of stats weakening and attack interference immunity before his normal attacks. Slain's second skill is Photon Cannon. Slain deals defense ignoring additional damage to the enemy based on his attack and crit damage value. He applies a 4-turn DOT as well that ignores defense and deals damage based on his attack. At plus 10 and above, this skill applies his additional damage and DOT even if Slain is silenced. Slain's third skill is Enhanced Barrier. Before normal attack, Slain gets a barrier that reduces incoming damage by a large amount. It also increases the incoming damage reduction cap. This barrier activates regardless if Slain has buff prohibition and it cannot be removed. Slain's Awakening skill is Lasting Crit Damage Boost. Before battle, Slain gets an unremovable stat enhancement that boosts his crit damage by a base amount and further increases it every turn. At plus 12, the stat enhancement also increases the attack by a base amount while also increasing it every turn. Slain is a warrior whose main draw is his ability to turn the tide of battle at the end of the round. Slain accumulates additional turns whenever his allies die and will cash out on those turns at the end of the round. This makes Slain almost work like a mage, where his true appeal shows up in the later parts of a fight. Slain's Awakening skill provides him with increasing crit and attack buffs, which is additional damage he utilizes. As a result, Slain deals massive amounts of damage and can shred some tanks like Mercenary in a matter of 2 or 3 hits. His other skills are mostly just to protect him by providing him with immunities and barriers whenever he attacks. Slain's normal attack is a skip attack that hits 1 tile. Slain deals a lot of damage that ignores defense and applies a short DOT. He has a lot of attack coverage and can kill many units. Slain is really fragile, however. Slain's barrier and immunities are only active whenever he is attacking. Slain's ideal runes are percentage assault runes. Slain benefits off of having a high base attack due to his rising crit and attack damage boosts. If Slain is not receiving any boost to his crit rate by his supports, you may want to run 1 or 2 assault fatal hybrid runes on him to boost his crit rate to 100% on his own. Slain really wants to score a critical hit more so than anything. I'll go over what Slain counters. Slain will annihilate many units by sheer power alone. His damage skyrockets to very high amounts due to his additional damage that scales with his attack and crit damage, which is boosted every turn. Slain's defense ignoring damage also makes him a really strong candidate against any unit that relies on defense to stay alive. Dalvi, Eden, Orphina, Levia, and Angelica are to name a few. Slane's DOT is also a really strong factor in his skill set, which makes him strong against Jin and Banaka. Jin's reflect doesn't work well against Slane because Slane's additional damage will be heavily mitigated by his own barrier, and the DOT will finish Jin off. Since Slane does so much damage, he can take out Banaka directly with his damage, or even by proxy of hitting another warrior and overpowering her since she shares her damage. Not to mention that Slane's DOT ignores Banaka's mechanics anyways. Slane's immunity to stats weakening also allows him to one-shot Cecilia and Celia pretty reliably. Slane will deal enough damage to blow through many units within a few shots if not one. Belfern almost stands no chance to Slane. Even 1 or 2 shots against Mammonier will take down her first energy guard, and he has no troubles blowing through her second one. I'll go over some Slane counters now. Certain reflexes are problematic for Slane, as when he cashes out on his additional turns, he will quickly kill himself if he runs into the wrong targets. Seto and Gran can take him out reliably. Seto's counter deals fixed damage which ignores Slane's barrier, whereas Gran's reflect deals barrier ignoring damage. Seer's Stigma is also particularly good in this case as well, as Seer's first hit taken from Slane will apply a Stigma onto him, and his second hit will cash out on the Stigma and kill him. Belieth could also be troublesome for Slane for the similar reasons that Seto ends up being. You could always have a budget fixed damage counter like Chokla and Zakon available if you need them. Slane is only immune to attack interferences or stats weakening before he attacks. Applying attack interferences onto him is very possible to have him waste his additional turns to either being unable to move or even hitting his own allies if he's charmed. You may find crafty use of Iris for the situation in regards to the charm. Albion, Arcan, Taylor, Ludmilla, Deka, and Ayan can apply stun onto Slane. Siegmund is an interesting unit to stall Slane with. Siegmund's guard will last for up to 3 turns once he takes a hit. As a result, if Slane ends up targeting Siegmund, Siegmund can tank at least 3 shots or more depending on how many tokens that Siegmund has. You can also use Kaelin to just waste his turns as well, as you will be hitting her over and over again as long as she has taunting. Her Drunken Fist guard will refresh with each new hit. Speaking of guards, it's not a bad idea to have Lucius hold off Slane. Each one of Slane's normal attack can take out 1 unit, and having Lucius eat all of those hits is pretty good value. Slane himself is also not durable at all. His very powerful barrier is only active whenever he attacks. Hitting him with almost anything should be enough to kill him so long as he's not protected by the likes of Banaka. Also, Slane only gains stats weakening and attack interference immunity when he attacks, so he's still prone to DOT counters. This naturally calls for Seto to rise again, but hear me out on this one. It's time to bust out your Sloan and Hijin, fellas. So some synergies with Slane. Slane is a fragile unit who ideally wants to live for at least 1 round so he can cash out on his additional turns. As such, he would depend on defenders and good positioning to help with that. Granhilder is a pretty good choice in that regard. Because Slane is very vulnerable to dying when he attacks certain units, having some form of protection can help with that. Banaka is very nice to cover his fixed damage weakness, whereas Veronia can cover for his weakness against Granhilder by providing him defense. Galania can provide him a second chance at staying alive if he kills himself with a reflect. Slane also works really well in fast-paced compositions where his allies will die quickly. As such, he works pretty well with most other warriors. Alec and Valze are obvious picks, but any unit that could do their job fairly quickly and doesn't overstay their welcome are just nice overall. Okay, so for my opinion, Slane marks a new concept in Brave 9 where a unit can just take additional turns on their own without the need of spells or whatnot. I was skeptical initially on Slane when I was reading through his abilities, and looking at him as a whole, I wasn't sure if he'd be good as other legend warriors given his lack of direct damage and the fact that he only hits 1 tile. He kinda banks on this gimmick of additional turns to really provide value, or so I thought. After a good bit of playtesting on him, I'm convinced that Slane is really good, especially in arena formats. Regular arena fights will be very messy, and a lot of deaths will be happening. Slane is a very solid unit that even in situations where the battle looks bleak and you lost a lot of units, Slane can tip the scales to your favor. Slane does way too much damage to be properly stat checked by the enemy. He can pop enemy units in the lane 1 by 1, even if he runs into tanks, he can blow them up. The only thing you need to watch out are for specific counter units, and those could generally be checked by other units that you choose to run on your team. Even in situations where not many of your units die, even 1 additional turn where Slane gets to move again can be detrimental for your opponent. Slane can simply just run on a 1-shot, 1-kill kind of situation. He doesn't need to attack 3 or 4 times in a row to justify his position on a team. I've had many situations where a single pot shot at the end of the round killed a crucial unit that could have caused issues for me in the following rounds. Slane is solid in all contents of the game. He's a fantastic boss killer given his high damage output and the fact that you can use your other units as tributes to make him stronger. You kinda just have him use his dead allies as ammunition for the end of the round, which sounds kinda morbid when I say it like that. The only content where I'm not sure about using Slain is Guild War, because you ideally want to lose as few units as possible when doing Guild Wars. Casualties are unavoidable, however, and you can still incorporate a strategy that utilizes Slain when you have to make sacrifices. So the question begs, should you build Slain? My answer is yes on this one. Slain is really good, and I feel many players will be able to appreciate the skill set that he has to offer. Slain just thrives on messy fights really well, and Arena could be a major clusterfuck given the variety of gimmicks and strategies that players tend to run. Spells in particular makes it hard to properly control how a battle might flow, and when you begin to lose grasp on how the fight is progressing, you're going to have a lot of your units die, and that's where Slain begins to shine. I also feel that Slain does so much damage that he's not going to be easily shifted out. Slain is only really countered by Reflex and Guards, so unless more of those kind of units are frequently churned out, then Slain might suffer. As it is right now though, I see Slain to be a really strong unit, but not a meta-defining one in the same way that Seto was when he was reworked, or how Mercenary ended up being on hers. Another thing that I like about Slain and why I would recommend him is that he's a very good unit to slow build. Slain is actually complete at +6 where he gets his immunities. Now I know rolling for legend is kind of a meme due to the poor rates, but once you get one of him, you could dump just 6 legend skill books on him and have a pretty powerful functioning legendary warrior. He provides a lot more value at lower skill levels than the likes of Alec and Valze, who have to be skilled up fairly high just to start seeing results. Beyond +6, Slain's skill growth is really modest. His +10 spike is actually laughably bad, as being able to do additional damage and apply his DOT through silence is rarely useful. His +12 spike is not very interesting either, but having a growing attack stat, it's nice. His +15 is far from necessary, but the actual boost from his additional damage from it is pretty strong. Basically, you build Slain up slowly, so that almost nothing will be able to block him by sheer HP value alone. Before I close this video off with some ending thoughts, I want to talk about my opinion in regards to the release of these two new legend units as a whole. First off, both of these legend units are pretty awesome gameplay wise and are very fun to use. I also felt that these two legend units are far tamer than some of the legend reworks that we've seen as of late. My theory is that they really want to avoid situations where one unit single-handedly defines a meta on their own, which is what occurred when Seto was reworked and what kind of happened again afterwards when Mercenary was reworked. It isn't to say that these two legendaries are underpowered or not as good, rather they provide a lot of new value and interesting tools which are very strong, but require some finesse to use. God forbid this is a strategy game. Now onto the question of who I think is better between Slain and Ledicrad. If I had a gun pointed at me and I had to answer that question, I would choose Slain, and that's my opinion given on how I played him. It isn't so much that Slain is better than Ledicrad, it's more so that Slain is far more accessible than him. Ledicrad is a unit that relies on an already well built roster, whereas Slain is really good right off the bat at a fairly low skill level. Slain feels really good to use and is a lot of fun. Ledicrad is also really fun to use as well, but he'll only get better as people develop more strategies and combos with them. If you're in a situation where you do not know who to build between Ledicrad and Slain, my vote goes to Slain, but if you choose Ledicrad, then I don't think that's a wrong choice unless you have no other defenders. In that case, have fun using him with like Carlson or something like that. Also, given the choice between building up Alec or Valze over Slain, my vote actually goes to Slain over the other two, but once again there's no real wrong answer here. Just know that Alec really needs +12 and above to shine, so he's definitely far more expensive than the other two. Valze is similar to Slain where her growth is very steady, but I feel like overall Slain is much more value at lower skill levels. All in all, Slain is a very welcome addition to the new Legend line. Good luck on your pulls if you do attempt to get them. Thanks for watching my Slain Mercenary Spotlight. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video or found it helpful. If you have questions, feel free to leave a comment. I always read those. And yeah, thank you. Goodbye.